Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Episode 90, 9-0, 10 away from 100 in-studio episodes of The Last Round. Thank you once again, guys, for listening to us, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, Boxing Socials, YouTube, wherever you're listening at. We appreciate it. It looks like we're kind of getting a lot of momentum here in the boxing world, especially with a lot of schedules being announced. Right, Mike?
So, something like that, I guess. It's better than March and April. So hopefully it's a snowball effect, and other promotions. We've got Showtime and PBC coming back, Matchroom coming back. Thompson's Boxing was just come back. Yeah. So, hopefully.
And speaking of Thompson's Boxing, obviously if you're watching the broadcast portion of this show on YouTube, you can actually see who we have on already. But for our audio listeners who listen to the podcast version of this show, he's back. I believe this is the third or fourth time. I think it's the third time. It's something like that, right?
It's not the first time.
It's not the first time. We could definitely say that. The editor in chief of the Ring magazine is back. Dougie Fischer. Thanks again for joining us, Dougie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for asking me. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome, man. People love to hear you, man. We'll tell you our statistics behind each episode that we do with you, and that's why it works, man. I'm telling you. Yeah, people like to hear you.
I like to hear that. I like the sound of my own voice. So, I think I sound weird. I think I sound weird when I hear myself. I'm like, oh my God, that's how I sound. But I like to talk, so I got to get used to it. I got to accept it.
You make our job easier for sure. So it's cool.
Thank you.
But as I mentioned, Thompson's Boxing just had an event, their first event during this pandemic era that we're living in. This past weekend in Corona, California, and Dougie, obviously you were the people who watched it, who kept up with it on social media. Yeah. You were a part of the event. Right. Just kind of give us your initial post-event thoughts on that card and the whole experience.
It let me know that there's a lot that has to go in. I mean, there's a lot that goes into promoting without a pandemic. There's so much with just the site coordination and the logistics, getting the fighters there, setting up the weigh-in and setting up, wherever it is, even if it's a club show, even if it's in a ballroom or in a small club, there's so much coordination that has to take place between the promoter and the commission and the fighters in all of their various camps and teams. And because of the pandemic, now there's even more that there's more boxes for a promoter to check, such as the COVID tests. And it's not just like one test will do. It's not like you can have everybody involved take a test 2 weeks out or 1 week out. You have to have several tests. And each test is like, I don't know, $120, $125 or whatever. So you're going to have to coordinate now with the testing company. If there's an independent cleanup crew, a little hazmat crew that comes in and disinfects the ring and everything around it, in between bouts, you got to coordinate with them. They cost money, obviously. So there's just more moving parts for the promoter. It's more money for the promoter. And it's a lot, and it's the fighters have to do without their teams. They have to do without their families. They have to do without the support of their fans and their boxing clubs and all the people who would normally attend a fight or be with them in the dressing room. Now it's whittled down to one or two individuals with each fighter. And they have to take those COVID tests and stress over that and all that. So it's harder. It's, but if boxing is going to come back, these are the protocols that the promotion and the fighters and everybody involved, including the media or commentators, have to adhere to. So for right now, it's the new normal. It has to happen. Somebody's got to take that first step. It was Top Rank. They did it last month. And, it's not like everything went off without a hitch. I mean, the series worked. They had a twice weekly series every Tuesday and Thursday. It received a fair amount of criticism, at least in the Twitterverse and social media. Their fans were like, I want better quality fights, or I'm just not into these fights, or whatever, or the broadcasts are too long. You have more commentators than you actually have fighters, whatever, but they did it. And part of that was the growing pains, having to postpone main events and co-features because somebody, either the fighter tested positive for COVID-19 or somebody close to the fighter, like a trainer or even a manager, would test positive, and they didn't want to risk it. So right now it's like that. Everything's on pins and needles. If like somebody who's part of the team tests positive, I think we had that a scenario like this with Friday's Golden Boy DAZN show, where Robert Garcia did not work the corner of Vergil Ortiz because he tested positive at some point. He tested positive, and so he couldn't be there. And thankfully, that didn't scrap the main event. Thankfully, they hadn't been in this close proximity or whatever. It's good that the different promoters in different jurisdictions. So far, we've had, in the U.S., we've had Top Rank, and we've had Golden Boy, and we've had Thompson Boxing in two major jurisdictions, Nevada and California. And these are jurisdictions that have really strong commissions, really powerful commissions that are used to dealing with boxing or whatever. So once it starts happening here with more frequency, it'll start happening in other states. Matchroom USA has a show in Tulsa, outdoor show in Tulsa, Oklahoma, on August 15. And the more the shows happen and they get through the shows, glitches and all, or snafus and all, and the promoters will learn from each other, because everybody talks. Matchmakers, they talk. Promoters talk. People, commentators, whoever's there on the scene, they talk. The cornermen, the cutmen, everybody talks, and so they learn about how to do this in the COVID-19 age. And then people will learn, and they'll do their own shows and figure out how to do it, how to make up that loss of revenue from not being able to have fans there. Especially for the club show promoters, they don't get a licensing fee from a broadcast partner like DAZN or ESPN, right? Or, PBC is going to start up pretty soon here. They don't have that broadcast fee from like PBC has Showtime. Thompson Boxing or Tom Loeffler's 360 Promotions or the Raging Babes Philly special, they rely on ticket sales and sponsors. And sponsors don't want to go big on an event if there's not butts and seats, right? So there's a catch-22 there. So, Thompson has dedicated sponsors, because the guy who owns Thompson Boxing owns this huge building materials company, right? Omega Products. Mm-hmm. So he didn't have to rent out a studio. He had a giant warehouse. And usually they do shows in the parking lot. They just moved the show inside the warehouse, and they did it that way because that's the way the commission wanted it. And they had, they had plexiglass, and they used their building materials. Like everybody seated at ringside. We were separated by plexiglass, and, we had to wear gloves the whole time, and they're serious about it. It's not just for show. You know what I mean? It's not just for when you're on camera. Right. They came up, Thompson Boxing came up with a method of bringing in revenue to replace the ticket buyers. And that was doing a pay-per-view, and a very reasonable pay-per-view, $6.50 if you're in the US or Canada. And I think if you were in, Latin America and Africa and some other places, it was, it equated to $3.50 US money. We'll see how they did, but I do know this. I'm friends with Tom Loeffler. I know he's paying attention, and he's thinking himself like, well, when I come back, what do I do? Do I just go on the UFC Fight Pass platform? You know, he had just done a deal with that at the beginning of this year to distribute his 360 shows, you know, but now he's thinking, I'm not going to have a live audience. So, you know, how am I going to replace that money? Maybe I do a small pay-per-view like this. So they're starting to think, so, you know, my point is I'm long-winded. My point is promoters learn from each other from the club series level all the way up to the world-class level. And the more shows, successful shows that we have that don't get canceled or whatever, the more we're going to have. But we do have to understand that anything could happen, you know, at any point. Like, you know, Top Rank could announce Lomachenko Lopez for, you know, October 3rd in Las Vegas or whatever. And the week of the fight, Lomachenko or Lopez or Lomachenko's dad or Teofimo's dad could test positive for COVID-19. Boom, we're out of an event just like that, you know. And I don't say that to put that out there in the universe to jinx it or anything, but I mean, that's the stress that promoters are having to deal with. Obviously, the fighters themselves are having to deal with, and so, you know, we have what we basically have right now for 2020 is you know, a tentative return boxing schedule in the fall and winter, because we really don't know. Any of these big shows the rug could be pulled out from under it because of you know, a COVID test in the main event. And maybe it doesn't maybe it doesn't scratch the whole show. You know, maybe it just gets rid of that main event and the co-feature steps up into its place. And I think that was maybe easier to do with Top Rank and their weekly series in Vegas, because it wasn't like a pay-per-view. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a huge show. It was, you know, developmental fights for the most part.
Dougie, what was your opinion on the Top Rank fights? You know, they seem to get a lot of criticism in the Twitter world for people saying that, you know, it was kind of boxing for boxing's sake, just to fill airtime on ESPN, where it was kind of A-level against D-level opponents.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion on that?
Well, there were some good matchups. There were some matchups on the schedule that we never saw. Ivan Baranchik versus Jose Zepeda. I was looking forward to that, right? And that got scratched, not because of COVID-19, just because of bad luck, because of Baranchik suffering an injury. But there were a few fights. Oh, and the original Jason Maloney's original fight. He was supposed to fight Oscar Negrete. I liked that fight. I thought that was going to be good. But his brother's fight with Joshua Franco, that came off, and that to me was a really good fight on paper. I knew it was a good fight because I'm familiar with both guys, both junior bantamweights, but also, you know, both guys were ring rated. Maloney was rated number 6 and Franco was rated number 10. And when you have legit top 10 contenders facing each other, especially in those lighter weight classes, usually, you know, you're going to get a good fight. And I thought we got a quality 12 rounds for the lesser of the WBA belts at junior bantamweight. And this wasn't an A-level fight or world-class fight, but it was kind of like fringe contender, up-and-comer level, though. But Blue Nose, Adam Lopez versus Korea. What's the kid's name? Louis Korea. That was a good 10 round, and it looked good on paper. I was looking forward to it, and the young men delivered, you know. So there have been some decent fights, and, you know, there's been some interesting stories like the emergence of Clay Collard. But yeah, I mean, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I did not sit from start to finish with each broadcast and watch the entire broadcast. You know, sometimes I'd have it on my phone, and I'd be in the backyard grilling, and I'd basically just kind of listen to it and occasionally glance at my phone as I'm flipping burgers or whatever. Sometimes I looked at the opening bout and I was like, I don't need to see that live, you know, and I'd do something else, whatever. I walk the dog, or I edit some stories, or I go into my garage and work out, you know, and then come in and fix something to eat or pop some popcorn or, you know, pour a beer or whatever and settle in for the co-feature bout or the main event. You know, I didn't sit down. I don't think there was a single broadcast that I watched all 3 or 4 hours. I thought they were kind of long too. And I am a fan of boxing shows where they move it right along. It's quick pace. There's not a lot of filler in between the bouts, and it's not too many fights on the card. You know, if we have 4 or 5 fights, then to me it's got to be like a pay-per-view level type main event, and those other fights have to be really good for me to sit there. I don't like to sit anywhere, you know, for 4 hours. You know, I don't care how good a movie is or how good the actors are, or how good the direction or the special effects or all that. You know, if you told me, okay, there's a special never before seen director's cut of Star Wars, but it's 5 hours, I'm not going to the theater and watching that for 5. I might watch it at home in pieces. You know what I'm saying? Like whenever I eat lunch or whatever, okay, I'm going to watch 40 minutes here or whatever. But I don't like to sit and watch anything for 4 to 5 hours or whatever. And sometimes we get that in boxing. We get shows that are that long. I think it's too long. So I'm not saying I didn't watch those broadcasts just because I thought that the level of competition sucked. I was just, they're long, you know, and there was a lot of filler in between where the talking heads are just going on and on and on. And there really wasn't a whole lot to talk about, you know, and I don't care to hear commentator, and I have the utmost respect for all of those commentators. You know what I mean? You know, Joe Tessitore, I think he's on his way to the Hall of Fame. I think as fighters, Andre Ward and Timothy Bradley, they're going to get my vote. I vote for the Hall of Fame. The first time I see Andre Ward's name or Timothy Bradley's name on a ballot, it's going to get a check mark. And you know, Bernardo Osuna is the best. They're all good. You know, Mark Kriegel is awesome. He's a great writer. But it was just a lot. And sometimes they would have that group and Max Kellerman. And to me, it's too much talk, too much analysis. And even during the fight, as much as I respect the opinions of Bradley and Ward, like I said, they're Hall of Famers. They were elite level fighters. You know what I'm saying? They're very rare. And they're not watching. For the most part, they weren't analyzing boxers who are on their way to the Hall of Fame. They're not analyzing boxers that are, you know, a lot of them, like 80% of the boxers they were analyzing, they're not going to become legitimate contenders even, you know. And I think that's okay to have fights at that level as long as the matchup is good. So I don't really care to hear that much analysis on their technique. You know what I'm saying? Like I can recognize. You know, as a longtime boxing fan, I can take one look. You know, I can watch the first round, and I could say these guys are club fighters, or this guy's a prospect in against a journeyman who's really here for a paycheck. You know what I mean? I don't need anybody to tell me that. It's totally cool if the commentators want to tell me that, but I don't want to be beat over the head with it either. Just tell me that, and then let's just see how the fight plays out. I don't need to hear all the nuances of what these guys aren't doing right, or what they need to be doing, because I also recognize their ceiling. I know what they are. I know a club fighter when I see one, and I'm like, this guy's doing the best he can. You know what I'm saying? He's not going to box like a former elite level pound for pound rated fighter, you know? So that got a little old too, I'll be honest with you. And then no disrespect to those former boxers. Like I said, they were great champions and they're going into the Hall of Fame, but just sometimes as a fan, I just want to watch the fight and enjoy it. And I don't want too much commentary or the commentary to be that heavy. You know, like, well, these guys need to really work on their defense and they need to do this. And they, you know, it's just like, no kidding, you know, but some fighters, they're never going to get that. They don't have that talent or they just don't care. You know what I mean? It's just, you know, and I feel like they have a right to fight the way they want to fight. You know, it's like a marathon, right? Really, it's like that front line at the start of a marathon. Those are the world-class elite level marathoners, right? They, you know, the promoter of that marathon paid for them to be there, flew them in from Ethiopia or wherever, you know, Japan or, you know, Denmark or whatever. And they have sponsors. And if they win the race or break the world record or break the race record, they get bonuses, you know. And everybody else, they paid their way to be there, right? Why are they there? Why would you put your body through that? Why would you box, right? You really want to do it. It's a challenge, right? You know, it's just a thrill. The same thing with somebody who runs a marathon. Like, why would you run 26 plus miles It's insane. That's way too long for a race. Okay. It's just, you do it because it's a challenge. And, 99.9% of those people in the New York City Marathon, they're not fast. They're just, their whole thing is, look, can I finish? It might take some of them 9 hours to do it, when you're watching that on TV, you don't expect the commentator to correct their form. Like all these, you see these people right here, that guy's overweight over there, and this person pumps his arms too much. And it's like, no, they're just in the race. They're just runners. Okay. They're not the racers. They're not the elite. And sometimes I think boxing commentators, and I'm guilty of this myself. I overanalyze myself too. Sometimes we just need to just watch the fight and enjoy it, and just let the fight speak for itself.
Dougie, staying in Nevada, are you a fan of the Nevada Commission using the instant replay? Because we saw it during the top rank shows when Pedraza against Lespierre, they ruled it a knockdown and then changed it to a trip. So you're a fan of it?
Yeah, I don't think it's perfect. I think sometimes you can screw up with that, but I think it's time for boxing to have instant replay. I've seen fighters lose fights who shouldn't have lost fights because they sustained an accidental, headbutt or elbow that cut them, but the ref didn't see it. And so he didn't see the foul, so he just assumed it was a punch. But the ref didn't see the punch either. But he saw blood, and so he said it was a punch. And there were members of the press, press row, who saw it and saw that the cut wasn't from a punch, right? But then the fight gets stopped, and that fighter has to lose by way of TKO when it really should have gone to the scorecards. Mm-hmm. It should have gone to a technical decision because the fight was stopped because of an injury that was the result of an inadvertent headbutt or foul or whatever, And so, if there are cameras there that are, have different angles where we can catch that, we need to try to catch that sort of thing because it's not fair to these fighters. They sacrifice so much. It's wrong for them to penalize the point for a knockdown when it wasn't really a knockdown. It's wrong for them to lose a fight by stoppage when the cut or the injury wasn't the result of a legal punch. So absolutely. And I think every jurisdiction, I think every state commission should have instant replay. I don't think it should just be in Las Vegas.
That was going to be my follow-up because obviously if they use it in Nevada and then they don't use it in New York, you might win a fight in Nevada but lose it if it was in New York. Yeah,
that's a problem with boxing in the United States is we don't have a national commission. We have state commissions, and they have different rules. And it would be great if we reviewed all of the best rules, the rules that really work, and just unify them. Had unified rules for all 50 states and outside jurisdictions. I'll put Puerto Rico in there, or some of the Native American sovereign lands. All of the jurisdictions within the United States, they should have uniformity with their rules, and that should go for how to penalize performance-enhancing drug use. If you test positive, that should go for how much weight a fighter should be allowed to put on after the previous day weigh-in. There are some jurisdictions where there's a second day weigh-in. I think that might be Pennsylvania. I think they do that. They do a second day weigh-in. And sometimes it's because of the sanctioning body. If it's a title fight, the IBF does that. They have a second day weigh-in. The WBC has weigh-ins leading into the fight, right? They have what they call weight checks, right? So 30 days out, 15 days out, or 14 days out, 7 days out, that kind of thing. I think that's good. I think anything that safeguards the fighters, protects them as a safety measure. I think it should be uniform. So I think I think commissions should even look at the rules that make sense, that belong to the sanctioning organizations and adopt them. But I do think there needs to be uniformity. You shouldn't, pop dirty in one state or get suspended in one state and then, go to another state to fight. And we had that not too long ago with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., where he skipped out on a test. I think it was a VADA test. I think he was training in California, and VADA came knocking, and he was like, "I'm not here," or whatever. He evaded him, and the fight was supposed to take place in in Las Vegas, and the Nevada Commission said, you're suspended for doing that. And then it was an Eddie Hearn promotion. Eddie Hearn just moved the fight versus Danny Jacobs to Arizona. And Arizona was like, yeah, come on over. And you shouldn't be able to do that. You know, that's a big problem. Uniformity is very important. And I just wish, I don't know what would make it happen, but I think it's something that's needed.
But didn't for the Chavez issue that happened with that when before they moved to Phoenix, like a week or two before the actual event in Phoenix, didn't he have a hearing with the commission in Nevada who gave him permission to fight in Phoenix? Weren't they still in the loop that was what they were waiting on?
Oh, I don't even remember now, man. All I know, here's what I know. Julio Cesar Chavez evaded an anti-doping test,
right,
and got to fight. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it happened. It was allowed to happen, and that I don't think that should be. I think it's serious. You know, you should if you miss a test. I don't care if it's VADA or USADA or another anti-doping association or the state. If you evade a test, you got to have a really good reason. There has to be a really good reason for you missing that. And if it becomes a pattern, I'm sorry, that's a red flag. I mean, we got to start paying attention to red flags because, Jarrell Miller had missed tests. You know, he had skipped out on tests, and he wasn't enrolled in the WBC's clean boxing program. And he was dropped from their rankings, but these are all red flags, and on top of that, he had a positive test as a kickboxer. And this was all common knowledge before he tested positive for 3 different banned substances prior to the shot against Anthony Joshua. So I think we need to pay attention to red flags, and other countries do it. I mean, there's a heavyweight Olympic gold medalist from France, Tony Yoka.
Yeah, his ban's just finished. Yeah,
right. He was banned in his own country. I think in France they banned him for a year or 2 years because he refused to take the drug tests. There was random 3 drug testing. I think 3 in a row, and I think that's fair. It's like that's just too many in a row. I mean, it's sure that some stuff happens, right? Whatever, you miscommunication or a family emergency or something, or you're ill and you're in the hospital or something. Okay, I get that, right? But other than that, if it's not a red alert emergency, and if it happens more than twice, geez, come on, there's something going on, and we have to start paying attention to the red flags and penalizing those.
Dougie, we had huge debate on Twitter this week with Nevada coming out saying that they're now not going to disclose the purses, something that everybody in boxing loves to talk about. So what's your opinion on that? Because, me and Danny were talking about it, and kind of, I believe that, they should, even though they're not real, the purses that they kind of release.
Well, that's the thing. It's not what's reported to the commission is often not all the money that's coming in. And there's various reasons why either the promoter or the fighter arranges it that way. Often it's just taxes. They don't want to get taxed on everything. But a lot of times where a fighter's money, especially the high-level guys, where a fighter's money comes from, they have different broadcast deals that cut them in. And what the promoter guarantees, that's not the fighter's entire purse. So, whatever. I didn't think much about it. I chuckled at Steve Kim's tweet saying that, now managers are not going to be able to use people's reported purses to battle debates on via social media or whatever. I thought that was kind of funny because that's how I always see it. I see somebody, it gets reported, and then whatever, somebody who hates that fighter says like, see, that guy's not getting paid, whatever. Or they say, they're not even fans or haters of boxers. They're fans and haters of promoters. And they say, well, that fighter would make more money if he was with this other promoter or whatever. So that stuff is all nonsense to me. I don't know. I kind of feel like, and I kind of feel like it's the fighter's business, you know. And I know it's public record, and they're public figures, but I feel like, you know, what people's salaries or how much money they make on a certain project, I feel like it's private. It seems private to me. I wouldn't want, you know, how much money I make to be put out there, you know, because I know when it is known, you know, people form opinions on you, or they try to get involved in your business, or God forbid, if you're making more money than they think you should make, they get their hate on for you. You know, I saw that with Dan Raphael. You know, there was always this conjecture of how much money, what was Dan Raphael's annual salary, man? God, I mean, to this day, I mean, even though he's no longer working with ESPN, there's just a number of boxing writers that just have this perpetual hard on for Dan. And I got to hear it because they think I care. You know what I mean? Like, they think I got a beef with Dan, and I don't. You know what I mean? So, you know, you get on the phone with me, and there's always this sort of negative gossip about him or whatever. And it's just, you know, or it's like they want to beat him. They're like, you know, I don't care if he makes more money than me. I'm gonna scoop him or whatever. And that's their whole thing. And they get reckless with that. Like they're so caught up with beating Dan to the punch with breaking news or whatever that, you know, they get sloppy with their fact checking. You know, I've seen that happen. And sadly, a couple of times it happened on ringtv.com, you know, where it's just, and I try to tell them, like, you know, break a story for the sake of the story. Don't break the story to beat one of your peers. You know what I mean? And I never looked at myself as being in competition with others. So, you know, it's just do the best that you can. Find your niche, you know, find your specialty and commit to that and learn your craft and have fun. You know, we're boxing writers. We're not that essential. You know, we're not doctors. You know, we're not. We're not policy makers. We should, you know, we should think about the reader. We should be entertaining when we should be informative. If this is something that we really like, we should enjoy it. And we shouldn't be looking at other people's money and getting that involved in other people's business. And I think there's way too much of that. And I think it's gotten in the way of fans' love for the sport, because you know boxing's it's vast. It's this English American martial art that's been around for 150 years, and there's the craft of boxing, you know, learning the technique and learning how to practice this martial art, and there's the sport of boxing, which is the competition, you know, between the combatants. And then there's the business of boxing, and you know, the business shouldn't just blanket everything. And if you're a fan, I feel if you're a fan, you should be a fan of the sport. And if not the sport, then be a fan of the craft. Like you want to learn it, or you learn it and you appreciate it when you see it. Okay, like that, right? It shouldn't. You shouldn't be a fan of the business, to me, unless you actually are in the business. You know, and it seems to me like people get talking about fights and they're talking about deal points. And they're talking about, you know, when it's like, you know, fights they want to see or fights that they'd like to see a certain fighter take, their whole perspective and stance is, well, the fighter makes this much money against this guy or this much money against that guy. But, you know, if he loses to this guy, you know, well, they're aligned with the same platform, so it doesn't matter as much. Or I don't know. It's like, I'm like, no, your reasoning for wanting to see fighter A fight fighter B is because that's the best matchup, or that, you know, it's going to be the most entertainment in terms of how the styles mesh, or it's the most significant bout. It makes history, or it's just, you know, for the winner of that fight, it adds to their legacy. That's the reason you should. It shouldn't be, well, he'll make $4.6 million over here, but he'll be fighting on DAZN and there'll be less viewership. But over here, he'll make $3.8 million, but it'll be on ESPN. You know, it's just, you know, be a bigger audience. It's just like, you're not the manager. You're not that. I don't know. It's just, you should just, you know. So in that regard, keeping, Nevada keeping the purses a bit private. I mean, I'm not applauding it, but I'm not mad about it, because I just feel like we get too caught up in that. I really do. And I sometimes I feel for the fighters. A fighter sacrifices much of his life dedicated to boxing and climbing that ladder, and then they finally get to that position where they are maybe making 7 figures, right? And then that gets blabbed out there to the whole world. That's like when you win the lottery and you got to stand there with that giant check. All your family members know about this now, and everyone's coming at you. Can you help me out? And there's people who want to, help you with your business. Oh, I can advise you how to make more money, how to make money with your money. And, this is what you should do with your money. And they don't know. They don't know who to listen to. Why should they have to go through all that stress? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because their business, they got put out there, and now they got leeches, and they've got grifters coming at them, or they got family members putting pressure on them for this and that, giving them sob stories. I mean, their career is stressful enough just with dealing with the boxing, So in a way, I kind of feel happy for the fighters that they, if they want to put it out there, how much money they're making, that's fine. But some people like to keep that stuff private, man.
But don't you think the scrutiny is always going to be at such a high level because other major sports, baseball, basketball, NFL, they're I don't want to say comfortable, but they're always public. Like Mookie Betts of the Los Angeles Dodgers just signed like a $350 million deal for like 12 years. So these other major sports announce their deals all the time.
Sure, and I think we'll still have that with superstars. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If Anthony Joshua, signed a new deal, either with the current people he's with or with, new folks or whatever, they're going to announce that. That's part of it. I mean, that's, mm-hmm. that's probably part of the contract. If we're going to pay you this much money, we want to let everybody know, you know what I mean? I think we'll still have that, when a Canelo Alvarez signs, for whatever, an 11-bout deal and it's $365 million, those platforms and the promoter, they're gonna let people know. But a guy, somebody fighting in an 8-rounder or an 8-round or 10-round preliminary bout, at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Canelo undercard, why do we need to know how much that man or woman is making? Why is it that important?
Right. Dougie, kind of going back to last week's DAZN card, Golden Boy's first event in this pandemic world that we've been in for the last few months. There was obviously a fight. The co-feature was actually scrapped. It was between Hesta and Tanahara Jr.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was looking forward to that.
Right. Just kind of get your initial thoughts on not the cancellation, but what you thought about the matchup in general.
Well, I thought it was a step up for Tanahara, and I've followed Tanahara's entire career. I probably called the action to his first, his pro debut. I don't know if you go to BoxRec and see how many fights he had at the Blasco Theater, or Fantasy Springs Casino, or a Canelo Alvarez undercard, in Vegas or Texas or whatever. I was, if I wasn't doing the commentary, I was there. So I've watched him, and I've known Robert Garcia since, I don't know, 1997. Well over 20 years, right? I remember him when he was before he won his world title, when he was an up and comer. You know what I mean? And I know that he knows boxing and that he and his father have a system, and his son now is part of that training team. And they know what they're doing. They can get the best out of fighters. But I haven't always seen the best out of Hector Tanahara. He had a good amateur career. I think he's got a good boxing foundation. And early on, I thought what was missing was maybe his man strength. He hadn't really fully matured. And then I thought maybe he was caught between styles, didn't know if he wanted to be a stylist or a boxer puncher or an aggressive fighter or whatever. And, I thought he struggled in certain fights that he shouldn't have struggled in. And I think recently it seems like he's putting it together. He's got enough experience to where he's got the confidence and his body is filled out a little bit more. But I wanted to see how he would do against Hesta, because Hesta he's fought 12 rounds with Jorge Linares. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And he's been in dog fights. He's been in tough fights. He's been in with elite level boxers, and he's been in hard 10 and 12 round bouts. So obviously he was going to enter that fight with a lot of confidence, and he's desperate too. You know, he's one loss away from being an opponent, from being like a total stepping stone. In fact, probably felt like, okay, they're looking at me like a stepping stone, but I'm going to be a slippery stone. So it's what you call a crossroads match. So I wanted to see if Tanahara could make the kind of statement that instantly causes him to live up to the promise he had upon his pro debut. Because I remember when he turned pro with Golden Boy, they were talking about his amateur background, and there was a buzz out of Texas. I think he's out of the San Antonio area, just like Joshua Franklin. And the potential, you know, to develop him and then take him back to Texas as a top contender, or, you know, hopefully a world champion. And for him to be an attraction, you know, back in his hometown and all, because that's all the major cities in Texas are boxing towns, you know.
Right.
But honestly, I'm just being honest. You know, he was kind of hot and cold, you know, or even, you know, sometimes when he would win by knockout, I was kind of like, you know, he didn't have that wow factor. I wasn't like, ooh, you know what I mean? Like, I'll give you an example. A young man that I watched on the Thompson Boxing show from Sunday. Okay. Ruben Torres. When I watched Ruben Torres fight, I'm like, I'm not just seeing technique and a good foundation. I'm seeing I'm seeing there's a certain dynamicism to his actions, and he can be smooth and then explosive, and he's mixing everything up, you know, and it flows. It's like he's the kind of prospect where when I watch him, every time I watch Ace Torres fight, I'm like, wow. I say it. I turn to Beto or somebody else, or Alex Companovo. I said, man, he's a stud. I say that every time. I probably say it to the kid. Kid, you're a stud, you know?
Yeah.
And I was, you know, honestly, I wasn't doing that with Tanahara. I still think he has that potential, though. I just think some guys, it takes them a little bit. There's a longer incubation period for different fighters. And for Torres, like after a year of him turning pro, he's knocking guys out, you know? And they stepped up his competition. Oscar Bravo's a tough guy. No one has an easy time with him. Nobody blows that dude out. Nobody, you know, he makes things tough on far more experienced fighters than Torres. And Torres just showed me a lot. He showed me just a smooth stick and move game. He showed me body head combinations. Showed me a vicious body attack. And Bravo, I know he had a good camp, a long camp, and he had been trained by Joel Diaz. And everybody Diaz trains, he asks a lot of his fighters. You know, they're going to be in good shape, and they're going to come to win. And I thought Bravo tried. He tried to rough him up, and Torres didn't get ruffled. You know what I mean? He kept his poise. And just when I thought he might get tired, he stepped it up, had a real strong fifth round, and really put so much punishment on Bravo that the referee and the doctor got worried. And the referee did stop the fight like a round or two later. You know what I mean? And I was like, that's what you got to do, you know? So I wanted to see if Tanahara could do something like that to a Mercito Hesta. You know, that I you know, and we'll see. Maybe, you know, they can reschedule the fight, you know.
Well, I mean, from your side, have you heard anything about a reschedule? Because the good thing is that Hesta hasn't been. It wasn't COVID related. It was just it was reported to be food poisoning. I know he released a video online, and so hopefully it kind of went away already.
I believe Hesta. Hesta's an honest kid, you know, honest young man. He's not a kid. He's getting up there in age, actually. But I mean, he's you know, and he's somebody who wants to. I've seen somebody. I think it was Fight Ghost was teasing Golden Boy, like, you guys, you can't quit Hesta, man. You're always going to bring Hesta back. But the thing is, Hesta makes himself available, you know, win or lose. You know, Hesta's very humble in victory, gracious in defeat. And when he loses, I'm sure he contacts Robert Diaz and says, hey, I can do better. Let me know when you have a slot on the next card. I'm not asking for a lot of money. Pay me whatever you can. I just want to get back in the ring. I want to prove to you guys that I can do better, and they're like that. And his whole team, they're all positive vibes. They're all real friendly folks. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Very likable. And so, guys like that, they're going to be brought back. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't be surprised if they rescheduled Tanahara Hesta.
Dougie, you touched on Robert Diaz briefly there.
Yeah.
Joshua Franco, I think, was his 13th world champion. What do you think?
Not bad. Not too shabby. 13 world champions, yeah.
What is it that, makes him, different? What is it they're doing over there at that camp that's so well? Because obviously the gym's now expanded. They have a big camp out of there. A lot of young guys coming through, and everybody.
They live there. No, they live there. Yeah. I mean, like when COVID hit, they were all there amongst each other. It's a compound. They live there. There's a lady who cleans up after them and cooks their meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they just eat, drink, and sleep boxing. And
I might move in.
And and the young guys, the young up and comers, they just live there. They only go home for holidays, right? Special occasions, right? Like maybe their father has a birthday or something. They go home, But otherwise, you're training. And then what he has is like there's this revolving door of like world class fighters that come in there, like a Jose Ramirez. You know what I mean? And so then they all learn from him, And if you're somebody like Vergil Ortiz, you don't just watch and learn from their dedication and their experience. You experience their experience with the sparring sessions. You know what I mean? And as well, Ortiz, he hangs with anybody. So you get that, and it's great when veterans can pass on knowledge to up and comers, and then they learn from each other too. They came from different trainers in different boxing systems, and some folks from other countries. You got folks from the Dominican Republic, and they have certain ways of doing things, certain ways of warming up. And maybe the fighters from Mexico or Mexican American fighters from Southern California, they look and like, I like that, whatever. Even if it's just the music, I like that. I like the music or what they put on and how they warm up. It looks like they're dancing. I'm going to do that. You know what I mean? And vice versa. The fighters pick up things. All athletes do. They learn from each other as well, but especially combat athletes. Wrestlers do this. Mixed martial artists do this, martial artists do this, boxers do this. They learn. Young guys can learn from each other. They can pick up on the good things, the positive things each one of them do. And there's competition. They're competitive by nature. So they're going to be that way. But with Robert, the fact that all the youngins are there, and then they have these, I don't want to call them old timers because they're not old. They're, whatever. They're in the 20s, late 20s and early 30s. But like a Josecito Lopez, having him come by and be around them, what hasn't he experienced? Mm-hmm. He's experienced, and it's not just in terms of boxing. It is that business side of boxing, and what do you do when you get this opportunity? Do you take it? And what can that lead to? I mean, it's hard to believe because you look at Josecito Lopez, young face, but he's still a player. I mean, even though he lost to Keith Thurman, he had Thurman going there in the middle of the fight. He gave Keith Thurman hell. So he's still a dangerous fringe contender or gatekeeper type. And it's hard to believe. I mean, I don't know how long ago. Maybe it was 8 years ago that he's shocking the world by breaking the jaw of Victor Ortiz. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to get a shot at Canelo after that. Right. And it was Josecito Lopez who got that shot against Canelo. Right. He went all the way up to junior middleweight and fought a future Hall of Famer and hung tough. Good God. I did the international call to that. Man, I don't know how he lasted into the fifth round because Canelo was putting some hellacious combos, but he had his moments in that fight, But a guy like that, I mean, that was 8 years ago, and look who he's fought. That's a lot of wisdom. That's a lot of knowledge that he can pass on to those young guys. And you better believe that he does. And you know what? Robert himself, my guy, former IBF junior lightweight champion. You know, he's experienced a lot. So that's a great learning environment. And in fact, I don't think they call it a gym. They call it the academy.
Academy.
Call it the Robert Garcia Boxing Academy. Yeah. And that makes – and shame on me for waiting such a long time to visit them. I used to visit him when he was in Oxnard.
Right.
And then for whatever reason, you know, Riverside's not close. I live in Inglewood. It's a long drive or whatever. You know, being editor of the magazine and having kids now and all, it's just harder for me to get out. But earlier this year, I visited them, and you know, Vergil was there. I can't remember if Franco was there, but Luis Correa was there, and he was telling me, and they were staying ready. They knew that they were fighting. This is before COVID, before the pandemic, but they were all getting ready for fights, you know. And in fact, if they didn't, if they weren't aligned with a promoter like, you know, like Ortiz has got, you know, he's in Franco and Tanahara are with Golden Boy, and I'm sure Robert's got some fighters with Top Rank. In fact, the guy from the Dominican Republic, I'm spacing out on his name. I think it's Carlos Adama.
Yeah,
he was he's with Top Rank, or you know, he was with Top Rank. But they were guys that, you know, weren't, you know, they were at one time with Top Rank or with Mayweather Promotions, and they got cut loose. Saul Rodriguez, Saul Nano.
Nano. Yeah.
He was there, but they're training. They're staying ready. And, you know, Robert was telling me, hey, if these guys, if we can't get them fights on like club shows or on the undercards of these major promoters, you know, we've started our own promotional company. You know, Robert with Mikey Garcia, and that's another accomplished veteran who these guys learn from, comes by the gym from time to time, you know, especially when he's training for a fight, and they learn from him. But you know, Robert and Mikey, they got their promoter's license in Texas, and they're doing shows in Texas. And so any of their fighters that can't get on a card, that don't have a promoter to get them fights, they'll put them on that card. You know, it's a club series in Texas, and they're really well attended, and they can stay active. So that's a pretty good system there. You know, that's pretty good there. It's a learning environment, but you know, Robert's not just a trainer. You know, he also manages fighters. You know what I mean? So he's got that down, and now he's promoting. So he's doing a lot. Yeah.
Dougie, today the executive officer of the California State Athletic Commission, Andy Foster, told The Ring, your publication.
Ryan O'Hara. Yeah.
Right. He was talking about the Sinisa Estrada, the Atkins fight that was on the Zone.
Yeah.
Just because obviously there's been a lot of attention on that the last couple of days since that happened.
That wasn't pretty. Hey, by the way, there's gonna be a follow-up story with that. Because I put Ryan in touch with Robert Diaz, the matchmaker, because I feel like we need to get the matchmaker's side to that. And you know, that story, and I know Ryan was wondering about Atkins. I guess Atkins' husband is a promoter, you know, like, you know, what's up with that? You know what I mean? Like, you know, why would he want his wife to, you know, go into this mismatch or whatever? And maybe they really didn't know. Maybe they really didn't understand how good Estrada is, or, you know, they weren't thinking, well, gee, you know, our fighter has 5 fights, you know, and all of her fights being in Kansas. I mean, one in my hometown, Springfield, Missouri, which I can tell you is not a hotbed for boxing. Okay,
not yet.
There's not a lot of talent there. I don't know about Kansas, but as far as I know, there's not a whole lot. You know, I know there's that one town in Kansas where, you know, where Brandon Rios and Victor Ortiz and you know, a couple other folks. What's his name? Orozco. You know, Antonio Orozco. They all came at him. Okay, all right, that town, boxing. You know, outside of that town, I don't know, man. You know, but you know, you can't always judge a fighter by box rec. Okay, you can't always judge a fighter by age. All right, and Atkins was 42. But, you know, if you go to BoxRec and you see the quality of her opposition, And you see where those fights took place, where they don't have strong commissions, where the commission's going to say, "Hey, go for it,"
Right.
You put it all together, and then here's the other side, of the equation. Estrada is the real deal. She's world class, and she was a top rated amateur. Like, she's kind of that first generation of female fighter that had an extensive amateur career, and who had like a pro level trainer, okay? And Dean Campos, right? Dean Campos is the guy who trained Sergio Mora from the amateurs all the way through the professional level and to a world title, So she knows how to fight, and she's based out here. Isn't Estrada out of East LA?
Right. Yeah.
Now that's a fight town, okay? Southern California, greater LA area, that's a fight environment. You got gyms in Southern California like Robert Garcia's Boxing Academy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You got the Wild Card Gym. You got the Maywood Boxing Club. You got all these gyms where, it's like, it's not just the best boxers. It's not just homegrown talent. It's the best fighters from Asia, from Eastern Europe, from Central Asia, from obviously from Mexico, from South America. It's the best fighters in the world are here. And what's that saying? Iron, what is it? Iron sharpens
iron. Yeah.
There you go, man. It's like Estrada's not one to mess with, You're not, and she didn't play with her food. Maybe she could have carried her, but yeah, she's trained in dropping combinations, and this poor lady couldn't take it. I'm glad she wasn't seriously hurt. But, yeah.
Right.
I don't know.
What'd you think of Vergil's performance against Samuel Vargas?
I thought, it went about as long as I thought it would go. I thought he would have Vargas down at least at some point. I couldn't believe Vargas stayed on his feet. But it was a really good measured performance from Ortiz. One thing I picked up watching Ortiz train, and this is not a sparring day, so this is just a day where he's hitting bags and he's hitting mitts, and, he'll do like 45 rounds, of just all the different stations, right? But mostly bags, heavy bag and mitts and all that. His power doesn't abate. His power doesn't wane after 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 rounds, man. He's hitting just as hard 30 rounds later as he was, the first 5 rounds. You can really hear it. And it's something that his father's proud of. His father was pointing it out to me, and I'm like, I can hear, man. I know enough people, I know power when I see it and hear it. And he's somebody who works on his craft, and he got warned for some old school stuff, spinning Sammy Vargas. I liked it though. I liked what he was doing. It tells me he's thinking. He's not. Yeah. I mean, he will seek and destroy, but he's not hell bent to where he's not thinking in there. He's a calculating guy, and I like his footwork. I like his hand placement. I like how he picks punches off. I like how he just take a step back. I like how he commits to his jab. It's a power punch. It's definitely it's a heavy stick. It's a heavy left stick. And obviously his hooks, crosses, uppercuts, body shots. He's got all that, He's a well-rounded young fighter who is obviously on his way to being a complete fighter, a complete boxer puncher. And they're rare. Complete fighters are rare. You got to want to learn every facet of the game. And he seems to be intelligent and a student of the game, which is bad news for the welterweight division.
Realistically, who could you see him like in terms of like a step up fight after this? I mean, obviously the PBC guys, it's hard to make fights with them realistically.
No, they're not going to. Why would they do that? Why would they? Right. Why would they? They're not going to do that.
Who would you see as a realistic opponent for him next?
There's a British prospect named Josh Kelly who's supposed to fight. Isn't Josh Kelly supposed to fight David Avanasian?
Yeah.
He's a tough gatekeeper, fringe contender, real hard-nosed Armenian fighter, pretty good technician, kind of a straightforward fighter, whereas Josh Kelly is trying to do a Lomachenko, but doesn't have quite that level of talent, definitely doesn't have the amateur experience, although Kelly was a good amateur.
He has more of an amateur style at the minute.
Fight, I like that. I like the winner of that fight against Vergil Ortiz. There's a guy that a lot of folks thought beat Kelly on the undercard of the Anthony Joshua Andy Ruiz show, and that was Ray Robinson. And he's difficult. He's got a good chin. You got to have a good chin. So I tell you what, Sammy Vargas showed Jake LaMotta level chin and balls, taking that without leaving his feet and firing back on occasion, right? But totally outdone and outclassed, and I had no problem with that stoppage.
Kowalskis would be interesting.
But he's a stylist. Robinson is tall. He's rangy. I believe he's a southpaw. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. You can check BoxRec. But we've seen him in with world-class opposition. He held the Mean Machine to a draw. And the Mean Machine was a punisher. So I like that. Robinson is a difficult style, and he's tough. So, that's what you want to see from Ortiz is you want to see guys who can test his intellect, who can take his power and give him quality rounds. And apart from that, then you want to see him against somebody who's tough enough to take the power and get in his chest and test his durability, test his chin. And I'm trying to think who could that be.
What about Mo Hooker?
Yeah, Maurice Hooker would be good. That would Maurice can crack, and he's got long arms, good reach, and he's experienced, and that would be a big fight in Texas. I wrote about that in today's mailbag, as a matter of fact. I said maybe in about a year, like that's a fight, because you want to have a big audience for that. Because if they take that back to Texas, that could be a main event, But that's a test. That's a good step up fight. I like that. And then within the Golden Boy stable, I think it was just announced today that Rashidi Ellis is going to be fighting Brad Solomon on the. I think it's the undercard, the Linares, the
Fortuna.
Who's Linares? Yeah, Fortuna? Linares Fortuna card. Yeah, right. I think that one. Yeah. So Rashidi is 27 years old, so he's a little more mature than Ortiz. He's got how many fights does he have? And I think he's got at least 20 fights. So he's got more fights, maybe he's got more than 20 fights, not much more than that. He's been tested a few times. He's got those 2 fights with Eddie Gomez. He's fast. Mm-hmm. He has a potentially difficult style for Ortiz. He moves his feet pretty well. He can move, stick and move. He's a confident guy. He's got a little bit of pop too. He's scored some eye-catching knockouts, including the first round knockout of Eddie Gomez. So that's a fight that Golden Boy could make in-house, and that could be interesting. So
Alexis Rocha
to me is still a work in progress, even though I think he has more fights, and he does. He's got 16 fights with 10 knockouts. He's not quite ready. I'm sure Lex would say, yes, I am ready. And but to me, he's still, there's, like I say, different fighters need to incubate a little bit longer than others. Hector Tanahara needed to be incubated a little bit longer, say, than Ryan Garcia. I think Alexis Rocha needs to be incubated a little bit longer than Ortiz. Ortiz, we know, is ready for a step up in competition because of what he did last year. He's fought an Antonio Orozco, right? And Orozco really brought it as much as he could. Ortiz has been in there with a veteran like Brad Solomon too. So he's had those tests. To me, Alexis Rocha hasn't had those tests yet. I need to see Rocha in with somebody like that before I say, okay, turn him loose against Ortiz. Now, if Golden Boy made that fight, I'd watch with interest because you got 2 punchers. You got 2 very confident punchers, two forward marching boxer technicians, and Rocha is a southpaw on top of that. So it would be interesting. But personally, I don't think Rocha's ready yet. Maybe next year. They've sparred as well. Yeah, have they? Okay. Yeah. What have you heard? I haven't heard about that. What did you hear about that? Is it top secret?
I don't think we're supposed to say, are we?
Yeah, maybe don't say then. Yeah, maybe don't say then.
Yeah.
They're both great kids. They're both great kids.
Hey, but at least they're getting.
I know. I've heard from reliable sources that Ortiz is giving hell to world class fighters like Lucas Matisse when Lucas Matisse was still on top of his game, and Ortiz was still with Joel Diaz and 5 or 6 fights. So
I was there. I was there for that.
Oh, did you see that?
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, he was. That was over there in the Coachella Valley, right, Mike?
That was Coachella Valley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he's precocious like that. No doubt about it.
So, Dougie, this weekend, PBC, Showtime, and Matchroom come back with some cards. I think this weekend is the first for Eddie Hearn for his Backyard series. What do you think about that whole concept in the backyard and how they're going to go?
Everybody's got to find their bubble. So if Thompson Boxing's got the Omega Products International warehouse, good for them. If Top Rank's got the convention center area of the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, good for them. Looks like PBC has settled upon that casino in Connecticut. Is the Mohegan Sun? Yeah,
right.
The Mohegan Sun. So whatever works, and if the backyard works, then go for it. As long as we get fights. And this show coming up, it's like a domestic level, right? It's Cheeseman.
Yeah.
Cheeseman. Who's he fighting?
Ted Cheeseman against Sam Eggington.
Right.
Oh, Eggington. Right. Okay. Yeah, those guys like to fight. Yeah, those are too aggressive. Yeah, that'll be fun. I'll watch it. That's a fight you don't bother scoring. You beer, prop your feet up, eat some popcorn, and just watch it. Yeah, just watch and enjoy. Yeah.
Right. And I think
I'm all for it. I think it's great. I think it's great, and I think it's. I tip my hat to him to putting together the Katie Taylor Delphine Persone
rematch, right.
and putting that underneath Dillian White Alexander Povetkin. That's a damn double header, right? That's August 22nd.
Yeah, I believe that's the final one.
That's the finale. Well, that's going out with the bang. I like that. I like both those fights. I think they're both going to be really good fights.
Mm-hmm. And then also, like you mentioned, the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut on Showtime. PBC returns with Stephen Fulton, 18-0 against Angelo Leo, 19-0. So a battle of
both guys are
ring-rated.
Both guys are ring-rated 122-pounders. I think we just brought in Leo. We just brought him in at number 10. Somebody dropped out. Oh, yeah, the Navarrete. He went up in weight.
He went up in weight, right.
Needed to bring somebody in. The ratings panel liked him, so he's in there. And Fulton's already in there. I think Fulton's like number 7 or 8 or so. So you've got two top 10 contenders fighting for that vacant belt, I believe.
Right.
That's going to be good. That's a good fight.
Who do you favor?
It's a matchup too. I don't know who wins that fight.
So 50-50?
Yeah, I look at it as 50-50, yeah.
I think Fulton.
You like Fulton?
Yeah, I think he's
more of a mover, more of the boxer?
Yeah, he's more of a technician. He moves well. I was hoping it was going to be Tommy Ward. I thought Tommy Ward was going to get the chance because I thought he was ranked number 2 behind Stephen Fulton. I thought Leo was 3rd, but obviously.
No, Leo's got the connections, obviously.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. That's
connected to the right people, yeah. And definitely the sanctioning bodies recognize that.
And then probably the biggest news of the last week or two, at least to the casual fan, is Mike Tyson is coming back, in quotation marks I say that, against Roy Jones Jr.
Yeah.
What are your initial thoughts on that whole situation, that whole event?
Well, Mike Tyson is not just.
Can you hear us, Dougie? I need to kind of cut out.
Oh dear, are we back?
You're cutting it out just a little bit. So while he tries to get the connection, Mike, what do you think? What do you think about the Mike Tyson, Roy Jones?
I just don't see how you manage to have exhibition fight. You know, it's either a fight or it's not a fight, right? So I don't know. For the casual, it's going to be good for people to watch.
Well, there's no headgear, though, right?
I think no headgear, but bigger gloves.
Oh, okay. But still, though, I mean, do you really want to get in a fight with somebody like Mike Tyson, you know, like, especially if he... Okay, wait, I think you're back, Dougie.
There he is, yep.
I can see you, Michael.
We can hear you. We can hear you. So
what happened
we're just
to Danny Z?
I'm right here. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Mike, just ask him the question.
Yeah, I could.
All right. I see you both.
You both.
All right. I think we're back.
Yeah, I think maybe my internet connection got wonky there. That happens. Sorry about that.
No, not your fault. Not your fault.
About Mike Tyson, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Well, you know, you said it's news to the general fan. You know, the casual fan. I would say it's news to the general public. Mike Tyson is that much of a transcendent celebrity personality. Like, he's beyond boxing and sports. You know what I mean? So there's going to be a lot of curiosity. There's going to be a lot of attention. I'm a little bit skeptical. You know, it's supposed to take place in California in September, right. September 12th, at an outdoor arena, you know, which seats 8,000. So it's like, are they going to try to have fans there? Obviously. Why else would you hold it there, right?
Right.
But is California ready to have that? I mean, California's on lockdown. I mean, I just called the action to a card that took place in California, and no fans. I mean, and strict rules. I mean, everybody got to have gloves. Everybody put your mask on if you're not on camera. Disinfect everything. You know, it's like, it was unbelievable. It's like, really? Is California gonna be ready to host an event like that by mid-September? I'm a little bit skeptical. I don't, you know, but who knows, you know, and is all the money right? And, you know, the press conferences they're going to have to hold, you know, how are they going to deal with that? Maybe they just do it all Zoom. I don't know. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, listen, I like that Mike Tyson is healthy and getting into shape and is feeling good enough to where he actually wants to get back into the ring. Right. And I know a lot of this is to promote various business ventures and enterprises, right, that he's connected to. And I think that's great. I want him to do well. You know, I want all these guys to do well. I know Roy Jones, he's, you know, he can't say no. You know, he's wanted to continue fighting ever since he was no longer number one pound for pound, you know, ever since back-to-back knockouts. It was like back-to-back knockouts in the mid-2000s, and then suddenly all of that skittishness that he had about traveling the world and fighting dangerous, fighting punchers or whatever, fighting, you know, different weight classes. He just like, it kind of freed him, and, you know, whatever, he started getting knocked out more. You know what I mean? Because, you know, he was 35 when he got knocked out. You know what I mean? But, like, you know, whatever. Now he's going to Australia, and he's going to Russia and whatever, and, you know, and fighting a lot of mid-level guys and journeymen, but then also fighting dangerous fighters like Denis Lebedev. You know, what was he doing that for? And that was a scary final round knockout too. You know, where
right.
I think Steve Smoger was the referee. Man, he gets caught and he goes, he's out on his feet, just kind of slumped over on his feet. And you think that's the message, like that's the wake up call, like hang up the gloves. But Roy's he feels good, and he likes to box, and he likes to perform, and he gets a thrill out of that. Tyson was totally different. Tyson gets beat by Kevin McBride, and he's like, I hate boxing. and he felt that way since the 90s. You know what I mean? And I remember I came into boxing in the late 90s, and at press conferences or post-fight press conferences, if you asked him enough questions, he'd be like, look, I don't know. I don't care. Talk to somebody else. I'm tired. I'm burnt out. I'm tired of boxing. I just don't know what else to do. I like this money. You know what I mean? He's that kind of honest guy. It's part of his appeal, by the way. Right. So I'm happy that if they're doing what they want to do, I'm happy for them. If they feel good about doing this, but at the same time, I know it's dangerous for 50-year-olds to beat on each other. You know, I just turned 50 this year. Not a whole lot you can do. I'm serious. Like, you know, I posted some pull-ups and I was only going halfway down, and some young guns on Twitter gave me shit about it. I'm like, all right, I'm going all the way down, you know, and then of course they say those aren't pull-ups, you're doing like this. These are chin-ups. I start doing this too. So I'm going to go to the track tomorrow.
Right.
I'm going to do at least 30, you know, and by the way, I'm doing stuff. I'm running a quarter mile, or I'm doing the stadium steps in between, you know, so I do get tired, but I feel it, you know, I feel good, you know. First of all, I'm struggling my ass off, like 7, 8, and 9, just doing damn chin-ups. But man, you feel it, dude. I mean, you know, I wake up the next morning and I'm like, what's going on with my neck? I don't understand. Or like I expect to feel it in my arms. I'm feeling it in my back and my abs and all. I'm just like, what's wrong? I'm like, oh, yeah, I exercised yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, just, your body changes, you know. And I think your punch resistance is lessened with age. Right. You know, listen, there's freaks in nature like George Foreman, okay? But that's George Foreman, you know? And there's guys like Bernard Hopkins that was world-class in his late 40s. But, you know, or Archie Moore. Few and far between. Those are very special individuals. And, you know, I do worry a bit. I work, first of all, in the opening seconds. And I know, listen, I think Andy Foster said that they're just supposed to move around. They're just going to take it easy. I think they have too much pride for that. I honestly do. They're a little bit crazy. This is what they do. And Tyson's very honest. He doesn't, the way he was trained, the way his fighting system, his style, it's full tilt. That's who he is. That's his ring identity. He's a frenetic, dynamic pressure fighter, a technical pressure fighter. And his combinations are accurate and devastating. Every punch is devastating. I don't know if he knows how to pull up on his punches. And here's the thing. I don't know if casual fans and even a lot of so-called diehard fans know, you know, just because you call it an exhibition, if you wear headgear, all right, and you're wearing 12-ounce gloves, right? You still get hurt. You can still get hurt. Right. You can still get a concussion. You can still get your ribs taken out. Seriously, like, especially if you can punch, you know. And then for Tyson, listen, if Tyson doesn't check Roy Jones or take him out or force a stoppage in the first round, if Roy Jones can take him a few rounds, make him miss, and you know if Roy makes him miss, he's going to make him pay. I know Roy's going to go to the body. I know it. I know this. But Tyson's a good body puncher too. Right. But if Roy can take him deep, Roy's going to try to take him out. Why not? I mean, he's still Roy Jones, and that's still Mike Tyson. Right. And Roy Jones grew up, you know, fantasizing, you know, man, I wonder if I could go up to heavyweight one day and beat Mike Tyson. When Roy Jones was getting jobbed at the Seoul Olympics, right, in 1988, Mike Tyson was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world and the biggest star athlete on the planet. Right. I mean, Mike Tyson was above Michael Jordan in 1988. You know what I'm saying? I know. I remember this. Right. Clearly. Like, he was bigger than life. Like, and I know, you know, so Roy Jones, A, looked up to him, but B, being the competitor that he is and having actually gone up to heavyweight and there being some talk in 2003 about Jones, when Jones had the WBA heavyweight title fighting Mike Tyson, it's been in his head. Man, how awesome would it be if I stopped Mike Tyson? I don't know. I think there's some instincts there. It's going to be hard for these guys to hold back, right? I'm long-winded. So that's what I'm saying. And that's the concern, them not being able to hold back and things getting a little crazy. Because if there is a crowd there, the crowd's going to love that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to be into it. Yeah, so I have mixed feelings about it, you know. It's not something that I want to celebrate. I'm not that personally excited about it, you know. But if they want to do it, you know, God bless them. I'm happy for them. If this is what they wanted, if this is really what they want to do, and they feel alive and it rekindles something in them, if this is rekindling Mike Tyson's love for boxing, I like that. You know, I don't like Mike Tyson hating boxing. You know, that's a bitter story. You know, and I like that he's kind of opened up more recently. You know, and is doing more interviews, and you know, he's cooperated with Ring Magazine twice. You know, for the mythical matchup, Mike Tyson Fury, and for the most recent mag, the Mike Tyson special edition. Right here.
I've got it.
Nice paper, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. This has been selling very well for us. Yeah. So, yeah, you know, the fact that he talked to Tom Gray and kind of reviewed great heavyweights of the past and put out on his Instagram, you know, him, you know, checking this out, you know, after a workout or something or before a workout. I don't know, he's shirtless, whatever. That was super cool. I love it. I love that, you know. And I want him, and I like seeing that, you know. Because I think Mike can be an amazing ambassador for the sport. Because he really is. He's well known. I mean, it's, you know, he's the most celebrated heavyweight champion since Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, in my lifetime, anyways, is the only heavyweight that has been a bigger deal than Mike Tyson was during Mike Tyson's prime. Yeah.
Dougie, do you think we're going to see kind of like a series of these? Because it looks like the poster and the Instagram and all the social media that there's like a legends only league.
Yeah,
you look at like,
that's other sports as well. That's others. It's not just boxing or whatever, but of course boxers. I mean, you know, as soon as Mike Tyson was, you know, putting out those clips of him hitting the mitts, you have you know, Evander Holyfield who's pushing 60, you know, saying, "Hey, I want some of that smoke," you know, and I saw Bernard Hopkins say, "Hey, I want a third fight with Roy Jones." And I adore Bernard Hopkins. To me, he's the last great fighter. He's an all-time great. He's an amazing success story in boxing. But who wants to? I mean, first of all, their first fight wasn't that entertaining. You know what I mean? That it just didn't work out. You know. Roy won 8 rounds. You know, he showed off how fast his feet can be. You know, once he found out that Bernard can take a hell of a shot. You know, and Bernard's a little bit dangerous as well. And then that rematch happening like 17 years later. I did that pay-per-view. It's not like a feather in my cap. It's a feather in my cap because I got to work with Sugar Ray Leonard and Joe Tessitore. But it was weird. It wasn't even like boxing. It was like, I don't know. Avant-garde dance or something like that. It was just bizarre. It didn't work out. They were too far past their primes, and their styles and their mentality. It just didn't. It didn't work out. It just didn't make for an entertaining fight. It didn't make for a fight, really. I don't know what, you know. The only moment of drama is Roy Jones rabbit punching Bernard. Bernard hitting the back of the head. I mean, really. I mean, that's the highlight. Literally, that's the highlight of the fight.
do you think he's good for boxing?
Who's good for boxing?
Do you think these kind of exhibitions are good for boxing overall?
No, not really. I feel like if boxing's in a good place, the attention is on the fighters who are in their prime.
Yeah.
And obviously we're not in a good place because there's too many allegiances. There's too many promoter platform allegiances that are exclusive. And there's not enough crossing of the street, as they say. Because I think if we had that, something like an announcement like Mike Tyson fighting Roy Jones Jr., it would be seen more as a sideshow, really. You know, if we had whatever in 2018 or 2019, if we had Deontay Wilder going up against Anthony Joshua, that's what the whole boxing world, anyways. That's what, but even the sports world, that's what they would be talking about. That's what people would be writing about, the showdown for the undisputed heavyweight championship, USA versus the UK, or if we had Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford, that's what we would be talking about. We would be talking about these two elite level welterweights, both of them undefeated, clashing, in a title unification fight. But beyond that, a fight where like maybe the winner is recognized as the pound for pound fighter. And if there's any nostalgia, it's not because old guys are actually fighting each other in exhibitions. The nostalgia would be comparing Spence versus Crawford to something like, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, or something like that.
We're getting
the 90s had a nice little round robin with Oscar De La Hoya fighting Ike Corte and Felix Trinidad and Fernando Vargas getting in there at junior middleweight fighting Corte and Trinidad and De La Hoya fighting Shane Mosley and that kind of thing. We had a little bit. It wasn't quite the Four Kings round robin, but we had that kind of excitement. And I remember during this period, my wife, who's not a fan of boxing at all, would watch boxing. She would, she would watch the pay-per-view with friends. They'd go to, a sports bar or, something. Here in LA, they would have them in like dance halls, like huge dance halls. Oscar De La Hoya is fighting, and she would go with her friends, or she would accompany me to Las Vegas. I think she accompanied me to when Vargas fought Ike Corte. She was actually an Ike Corte fan. She liked Corte.
Oh, wow.
But she liked it when these guys who were in their prime and undefeated, or they had one loss or whatever, they're fighting each other, and it was and that's what boxing needs. And since then, and this is the late 90s. This is like, 1998 to 2000, Since then, she hasn't been into it. She's not into boxing. She doesn't care. She doesn't care about these because they're not being built up enough. They don't fight enough on their way up. And then once they get there, the unifications and the what's the word? The star-studded and the significant matchups aren't happening frequently enough. I mean, with the PBC, you had Keith Thurman fight Sean Porter, and then he fought Danny Garcia, and that was good, And then, finally we had Porter fighting Errol Spence, and that delivered. That was awesome. But the problem is there's too much time in between these fights. Mm-hmm. There needs to be, you know what I'm saying? There needs to be it needs to happen with more frequency, right? And just we didn't. And I like Keith Thurman, by the way. I do. I like him. He's one of my favorite fighters, but I can't get excited about him. He doesn't fight often enough. There's too much time between. He's going on spirit journeys, or he's injured, and it just doesn't happen enough. We need that consistency. We need continuity. And if we don't have it, then you know what? We're going to get nostalgic. We're going to get excited for the old timers, because the old timers remind us of when boxers boxed. It wasn't about platforms. It wasn't about different sides of the street. And if it was about different sides of the street, the fighters worked it out, or they forced it to happen. Like we had with Pernell Whitaker and Julio Cesar Chavez. It's like somebody has to say, you know what? Whatever. That guy can get the lion's share of the purse. His promoter can be the lead promoter. His network can do the pay-per-view. I don't care. I just want to prove that I'm better than him. Okay? And that's what he did. That's what we need. We need Pernell Whitakers. May he rest in peace. We need somebody. And Whitaker jeopardized his relationship with HBO to cross the street to fight on SET, which was the pay-per-view arm of Showtime. And I'm sure he made his promoter nervous fighting on a Don King card and fighting a Mexican legend, a Mexican attraction in San Antonio, Texas, where there's a lot of Mexican fans. 60,000 fans there. How many were not of Mexican descent? Really? I mean, it was like 90% or 99%, whatever. The thing about, and Whitaker don't care, you don't care. And at this time it was the WBC and Jose Suleiman, very close with Don King, very close relationship between the WBC and Don King Promotions. And the WBC at that time, back in the day, the sanctioning organizations would, select the officials. They had their officials or whatever. It's everything stacked against Whitaker. It's like, whatever. Right. Here to prove that I just want to see if I can beat this guy. All right. And I'm the welterweight champion. I want to defend it against a great fighter. Guy hasn't lost in 88 fights. Come on. I want this. Fights got to happen when it's time, when it matters, when it's significant, when there's legacy on the line. And that's what makes boxing great. And when that happens in boxing, it's better than any other sport. But those type of fights and those type of fighters, they're few and far between these days. So, yeah, we're going to get nostalgic for Mike Tyson because at one time he's the baddest man on the planet. He's undisputed. And we're going to get nostalgic for Roy Jones because when he was pound for pound, it's like, yeah, nobody disagreed. Like, that guy's untouchable, and he was undisputed light heavyweight champion. He unified those belts, so we get nostalgic for that.
Last couple topics here, Dougie, before we let you go. Gilberto Ramirez, former world champ at, I believe, 168. He moved up to 175 not too long ago. Him and Top Rank just split up. What do you think the future holds for Ramirez?
Well, he's a free agent, right? So, I mean, listen, Canelo Alvarez is having trouble finding dance partners. These guys, these guys are pricing themselves out, or they need a certain amount of, they need 12 weeks or 15 weeks or 6 months to get ready. I don't know, whatever. But Canelo's having trouble getting, he gets criticized for not fighting fighters who are his age, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, there's a lot of guys that say no. It's a big pay, they huge, like seriously career high, not just career high paydays, but 2 and 3 times as much as they've ever made. They're saying no, and then they just don't care. They're like, whatever, I'd rather keep my belt, keep my O, than lose and not get paid, retirement money, right? You know what I'm saying? Right. So maybe if he's not too greedy, I mean, I think that's a Canelo is comfortable fighting at 168 pounds. If he can come down to 168, he did make 168 at one time. I think he only had 1 or 2 fights at 175. That's a huge fight. That's huge. And I'm trying to think of who's out there. If he wants to just fight at light heavyweight, I'm trying to think who he could fight, or if there's because
Bivol, yeah.
Bivol would be the only guy, right? Because Beterbiev is aligned with Top Rank.
Callum Johnson.
Cal, that would be fun. Yeah, Callum Johnson would be a fun fight with Ramirez. And maybe Eddie Hearn signs him up, or maybe he does a deal with Golden Boy to get a shot at Canelo or whatever. But I think Canelo versus Zurdo Ramirez in Texas would be. I mean, that could be a huge fight. When fans are allowed to return to events, to me, that could be a stadium fight potentially. He's very well spoken. He's a good looking guy. He's a good interview. At one time, he was an entertaining boxer, but that petered out real quick. I mean, ever since he won the WBO title at super middleweight, I haven't enjoyed watching him fight, but. He's got a sparkling record, and he is in his prime, and he is a good boxer, and a volume puncher at that. So maybe he would mesh well with Canelo, but I have to imagine that's got to be their end goal, is to land that Canelo fight. That's what I think, but. The new generation they're strange. I can't anticipate what they're thinking or what their goal is, or what they want to do. For a lot of them, it's just very important to call their own shots, to kind of at least feel like they're their own boss. And if they feel that they're not being treated right, they either make that very public, like some like have, or they say goodbye. They for better or worse, they just say, "Hey, cut me loose." And maybe this is the right time to do it. Just with these sort of 3 major platforms. The PBC and Top Rank ESPN and the Zone with Golden Boy and Eddie Hearn. They're desperate for world class fighters, players, even if they're B-sides. But if you're an undefeated Mexican national who's learning English, and you're a nice looking guy who's well spoken, maybe you see how, what you can get on the free market, and maybe, I think there's a lot of guys getting overpaid out there. So, if I was a fighter, I'd be kind of like, hey, you can overpay me, whatever. If you can put yourself in that position to where people bid over you or whatever, then, maybe it works out for him. I wish him luck. I've met him. He's a nice guy. I like him. He's a cool guy.
Right.
Cool cat. He gave me a T-shirt. I've got a Zurdo Ramirez T-shirt somewhere. I've got so many boxing T-shirts, but yeah, he's a nice guy.
Dougie, ESPN just recently did a top 25, under 25, meet the stars of the future. If you could just give us your top 3.
Under 25? Mm-hmm. 2 of them are welterweights, Vergil Ortiz Jr. and Jaron Ennis. Under 25. Wow. There's Devin Haney. There's Teofimo. I'm going to say Teofimo Lopez will be my number 3. Not necessarily in that order. I don't know who's actually Teofimo. He should be number 1 because he's
a champion.
He's got a world title. He only has 15 pro bouts. He's 21 or he turned 22, and he's wanted to fight one of the top fighters pound for pound for more than a year now. Probably for like 2 years. He's been calling him out or saying his name, but he wants to have a unification fight with Vasily Lomachenko, who's the Ring Magazine lightweight champion. I think we have him number 2 pound for pound behind Canelo Alvarez. So he's ahead of those guys, as bright of a future as Ennis and Ortiz appear to have. Teofimo Lopez has already realized some of his potential. He's a major world title holder, and he's in line to have a major fight against the guy that a lot of my peers say is already a future Hall of Famer in Lomachenko. So he's super precocious. I mean, he's way ahead of the game. So I'd say Teofimo Lopez, number 1. And then, tied for number 2 is Ortiz and Ennis. And who's better of those 2? You know what? There's a real easy way we can find out. They can share the ring. And I hope that happens next year. I think that's a super fight, by the end of 2021. And I love the style matchup.
Do you think we'll see Lopez?
I love the mentality matchup. To me, that's like Chavez Sr., Meldrick Taylor, Philly fighter, fast hands, real busy on the inside, could stick and move and box from a safe distance, but he's just got that grit, likes to get in there and mix it up, and got that chip on his shoulder. I think that showdown just has the makings for a classic. Both guys maybe need to mature just a little bit more, but they already have the look. I mean, don't they both look like top 5, if not, top 10 welterweight contenders? I mean, I'm more excited about them than I'm excited about guys who I like Keith Thurman and Danny Garcia. And, I'm excited about Spence when he fights, but who knows, when we're going to see him, and kudos to him for wanting to fight Danny Garcia when he comes back or whatever. But I don't know I got to see what he looks like, And I have the utmost respect for Terrence Crawford, but he can't keep fighting the level of opposition that he's fighting and expect people to hold their interest. And I know it's not his fault. I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying it's hard to get excited about some of these fights or some of these potential fights. I think I saw something about him maybe fighting Patrick Teixeira at junior middleweight.
Yeah, I saw that.
Wow. I don't know if they're talking or whatever. Still not that excited about it, I want to see elite fighters against elite fighters. He's elite. He's easily top 3, pound for pound.
Dougie, in terms of touching on Crawford really quick, just because obviously his options are limited because he's on one side of the street and however you want to call it. Yeah. I mean, don't you think that he's got to the point where Top Rank should just let him go to Showtime to fight these guys on their network and show that he can beat them and bring their belts back?
Yeah, he stays a Top Rank fighter, but he goes. They don't. Yeah. So here's the problem. I think under the old system, it might have been that way, but the way these deals are now with the platforms, with the broadcast they're partnerships with the promoters. Okay. It's not like, back in the day, HBO was, this premium cable network that had a huge budget for boxing. They had gotten involved with boxing early, like in the 70s, and they found that they could build up their subscribers, and they did so, televising boxing, and it was worth it for them to outbid the networks, right? And so at some point, like by the late 80s, they had some super fights, that were shown on other platforms too. They were all, like Hagler Leonard was, closed circuit, and it was whatever. A couple of weeks later, it was shown on the networks or ESPN and all that, but HBO had that, right? That was there. So and once they got into the pay-per-view age, in the 90s, and they, with TVKO, and they did really well with George Foreman versus Evander Holyfield. They understood that, what, we can make a lot of money with these events. It's worth it for us to invest heavily in boxing and build up the stars of tomorrow, right? So they had this huge checkbook, and basically they just sat back, and promoters came to them saying, will you buy this fight? Is this fight worth it to you? And it was yes or no. And for a long time they had Lou DiBella, who was like their one of their top executives, with the boxing program, the sports, HBO Sports. And he knew boxing. He understood boxing. He wasn't just a fan. He actually understood how styles matched up, and he understood that you have to build up a B side. You got an A side, well, you got to build up a B side, right? And you got to build guys up and showcase them. And so sometimes, one side just had the A side and the other side had the B side or whatever. And, you got this with, whatever, De La Hoya versus Vargas, or De La Hoya versus Felix Trinidad, or De La Hoya versus Shane Mosley. Okay. Shane Mosley was promoted by Cedric Kushner, right? Mm-hmm. Trinidad was promoted by Don King. Ike Boutte was promoted by Main Events. All right. You see where I'm going here. Vargas Main Events, right? They're not all in-house, right? So these promoters had to work together to get that huge licensing fee from HBO, or to have HBO's partnership in producing the pay-per-view, producing and help to distribute the pay-per-view on the cable systems, right? We had to work together. So, but now it's like the promoter is not independent of the network. The promoter and the network are partners. Right. And the network is like, we're paying you a lot of money to put on these fights and to showcase these fighters on our network. They're not going to allow a star to go. They might allow like a lower level guy to leave the network. And we've seen that with the BBC. They'll let an Andy Ruiz go across the street. You know what I mean? Right. And what, Top Rank did it with Jose Ramirez when he fought Mo Harris, because I just think that, the Eddie Hearn and DAZN were offering the most money maybe. And they felt confident in their guy. Like, well, he's going to go over there, but he's going to come back to us with 2 belts, That's exactly what happened, and they were smart like that. But when it comes to their stars, okay, when it comes to their premium dudes like a Tyson Fury, unless, it's the networks themselves come together, they're not letting Tyson Fury just cross the street, and they're not letting Terrence Crawford or Vasily Lomachenko just cross the street or whatever, because they know that their guy's going to win the fight, because the network's like, no, that's what we're paying you for. We're paying you for those guys, the stars, so it's just a lot harder. It's just, that's the way it is, and like I say, we're not seeing Pernell Whitaker's. Whitaker had an exclusive. He had a contract with HBO, okay, and he, willing to ruin it. He was willing to break it to get for his legacy, And I don't know if guys are willing to do that anymore. I think guys are just now looking at like, okay, what's my purse? How much am I making? And can I get out of this game undefeated, unscathed, and rich? And you can't fault them for that either. You can't fault them for that, but they can't fault us for not being as interested in them as competitors, or being as interested in boxing as maybe the past generation was, or if you're old enough as you were, in whatever the 2000s or the 90s or whatever. Even the 2000, even 2000 to 2009, pretty good. I mean, the fight, you know what I mean? But certainly 90s and 80s, the right fights happen at the right time. And that's kind of what we're missing here.
Right. Well, Dougie, I think we've almost had you for 2 hours. This is the longest you've been on our show and all your guest appearances. So we definitely appreciate every single time you come on. As like I said,
thank you, guys.
Based on our behind the scenes stats, people like to listen to you. So
yeah. They have to be patient, or they have to have a lot of time on their hands for this one. Right?
No, but they like it, man.
Yeah, just have it on. I listen to podcasts when I wash dishes or cook or whatever.
Right. Absolutely. Well, before we let you go, Dougie, I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this know exactly who you are, but go ahead and plug your social media.
RingTV.com. I'm the editor of that website. I'm the editor-in-chief of RingMagazine.com. If you're not a subscriber, you should be. You get a great value. I got people complaining to me saying, "Hey, I went to the store," and definitely go to the Ring Shop. Go to the shop. It's Ring, or the URL is Ring Mag Shop. Yeah, ringmagshop.com. And if you're not a subscriber and you don't have the Mike Tyson special issue, you don't have the Gotti Ward special issue, these two magazines right here. Let me see if I can center it up here. If you don't have these, you can get them at the shop. But see, if you were a subscriber, you just get them. How about that? Including the Four Kings special issue. You get them. They're really nice. They're collector's issues. It's really good writing. It's great photography, great design. So be a subscriber, because we're going to keep doing these. We're going to do more special issues. I'll let you in on a little secret. The next one is going to be Manny Pacquiao. So if you're a Filipino fight fan, all right, you don't have to be Filipino to be a Manny Pacquiao fan. If you love Manny Pacquiao, you're going to want it. So if you subscribe now, that'll be the first issue you get. So go to ringtv.com and subscribe to the print magazine. Or if you don't care for paper, okay, just do the digital edition. It's a lot cheaper. But you get the digital edition automatically with the print subscription, which comes out a lot. You'll get the digital edition is made available maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the print magazine mails out. So you get a little sneak preview. But it's great to have the paper, man. It's great to have the magazine in your hand. So do that. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram at Dougie Fischer, DougieFischer. That's about it.
That's about
Read the
it.
mailbag. Send me your questions. I think that's Dougie at boxingmailbag.com.
Any questions, right?
Yeah,
Even the heat. Yeah.
Bring the heat too. Bring the hate. I like that. Bring it on Twitter too. I won't block you. I don't block nobody. I'm stronger than you suckers, man. I'll break you down. I'll retire you all.
Yeah, Mike,
right.
Go ahead and
I'll make you block me. I've been blocking you.
Mike,
we are at the Last Round 12 on Twitter and Instagram, and obviously we'll be back next week with episode 91, probably reviewing the Matchroom shows, the Showtime shows, and everything in between.
So once again, Dougie, and I know we're repetitive, but our big thanks to always jumping on here. I think you've been on our show the most out of anybody. I think you just beat out. I think you just beat Cutman. Mike Rodriguez.
Oh, he's the man. All right, yeah. Well, you have to have him back on too, though.
Yeah. He's been on a couple times too, but I think you just beat him out. But he's really good too.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for listening to me ramble. I am long-winded, so it's
no, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on.
You got it. And then, like Mike said, guys, go ahead and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Last Round 12, and we'll be back next week with some more boxing-related content during this pandemic for you guys. So, for our special guest, Dougie Fischer, editor-in-chief of the Ring Magazine, for my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round